I'm Amanda, 32 years old, the youngest daughter of Harold. 5 years ago, I walked away from a fast-moving marketing career to take care of my dad after my mom passed. I thought I was giving up everything to keep our family together. Last week, on his 70th birthday, I wore my mother's old pocket watch, a piece I've kept for years, its glass cracked since the week we buried her. I thought it would be a night about family, about love, about honoring everything we'd survived. Instead, during the toast, my brother Derek stood up with a smirk, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Pack your bags, loser. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from in the comments. And hit that like button so you don't miss how this birthday turned into the fight of my life." Because what happened after those 4 words was months in the making. And by the end, that cracked watch would mean more than I ever imagined. The first thing I noticed that morning wasn't the chill in the air. It was the weight of the pocket watch in my hand. The glass face had been cracked for years, a spiderweb fracture that caught the light in strange ways. For some reason, today, it felt heavier, like it knew something I didn't. I'd worn that watch every important day of my life. My mother gave it to me when I left for college, telling me, "As long as this still ticks, you'll always find your way back home." After she passed, I found myself holding it in quiet moments, listening to the soft rhythm, as if her heartbeat had been trapped inside. That morning, I was standing at the kitchen counter, whisking eggs for Dad's breakfast, when my phone buzzed. A text from Derek, my older brother: "Dinner tonight, dress nice." No greeting. No explanation. Just that. I thought it was about Dad's birthday dinner. He was turning 70, and I'd been planning it for weeks. The menu was his favorite, beef Wellington and Mom's apple pie. I'd spent the last 2 nights in the kitchen perfecting the crust, even using Mom's old rolling pin, the one with the worn wooden handles. Every detail was supposed to make the evening special for him. But something about Derek's message sat wrong. He rarely texted me unless it was about serious matters, which usually meant family finances, or criticism of my choices. Still, I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just the nerves of hosting an important dinner. The day moved in a quiet rhythm. Dad took his morning walk around the garden while I polished the silverware. Patricia, my stepmother, stayed in her room longer than usual. I heard the faint click of her heels upstairs, followed by the muffled sound of drawers opening and closing. By late afternoon, the house looked beautiful. Blue and white balloons floated above the dining table set with Mom's best china. Old photographs lined the mantel, each one a frozen moment from Dad's life: college graduation, wedding day, holding me as a baby. I paused in front of one from a fishing trip when I was 8. Dad was laughing, sunburned, his arms slung around my shoulders. I wished I could bottle that moment, keep it safe from whatever shadows had been creeping into our family. As I pinned the last balloon, I felt the watch shift in my pocket. I took it out, turning it over in my palm. The crack caught the fading sunlight. I traced it with my thumb, remembering the day it happened. The week after Mom's funeral. I dropped it in the driveway, too distracted by my own grief to care. Since then, the crack had become part of it. A flaw I'd learned to live with. The doorbell rang just as I was tucking the watch back into my pocket. Patricia swept in from upstairs, dressed in a deep red dress I'd never seen before. Her perfume filled the hallway, sharp, unfamiliar. She glanced at me, then at the dining room, and smiled in a way that felt off. "I invited a few extra guests," she said, brushing past me. "Hope that's not a problem." Before I could answer, Derek walked in, wearing that smug expression I'd known since childhood. He hugged Dad, exchanged a few polite words with the neighbors who'd arrived, then looked straight at me. The watch felt hot in my pocket. My heart picked up pace. When the room quieted, Derek raised his glass. "Before we eat," he said, his eyes locking on mine, "I have an announcement." I didn't know it yet, but in the next 30 seconds, my life, and Dad's, would tilt in a way we could never tilt it back. I've learned that betrayal rarely announces itself with a shout. It seeps in quietly, through glances you're not meant to catch, words that stop the moment you walk into a room. The week before Dad's birthday, I'd begun noticing patterns. Patricia and Derek seemed to appear together more often, always when Dad was napping or out for a doctor's appointment. I'd find them in the kitchen, their heads bent close over stacks of papers. The first time, Patricia smiled too quickly when I entered. "Just insurance stuff for your father," she said, sliding a folder shut with a snap. Derek added, "You wouldn't understand, it's complicated." The second time, I didn't announce myself. I lingered by the hallway, hidden by the wall. Their voices were low, but the words carried. "The appraisal came in higher than expected," Derek murmured. Patricia's tone was sharper. "Good. The sooner we close, the sooner we're out of here." Then, after a pause that felt like a blade being drawn, "Don't worry about her. I'll handle it." The her wasn't hard to figure out. I stood there, fingers wrapped around the pocket watch in my sweater pocket. The cracked glass pressed into my skin, grounding me in the moment, reminding me to stay silent and keep listening. They must have heard the floorboard creak under my weight, because the papers vanished in seconds. Patricia appeared in the hallway, her smile rehearsed. "Need something, Amanda?" That night, long after the dishes were washed and the house was quiet, I sat in my room with the watch on my desk. Its ticking filled the silence. I imagined Mom sitting across from me, telling me to trust my instincts. The next morning, more strangeness. I came downstairs to find Patricia in the kitchen, pouring tea into Dad's favorite mug. She handed it to him with a sweetness that felt staged. "Drink up, darling. You need your rest." By mid-afternoon, Dad was sluggish, his sentences trailing off mid-thought. "Just tired," Patricia said when I asked. But I couldn't shake the memory of her hand hovering over the pill bottles last week. 2 nights before the party, I caught another fragment of conversation. I was upstairs, folding linens, when I heard Derek's voice drift up from the living room. "Once he signs, it's ours." Patricia replied, "And she won't see it coming." The watch was in my pocket again, ticking against my thigh like a metronome marking the countdown. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, the crack in the watch's glass etched in my mind. It looked like a map, fractured paths all leading to one inevitable point. The day before Dad's birthday, the tension in the house was so thick it was almost visible. Patricia floated around with a kind of giddy energy, humming under her breath, rearranging place settings I'd already perfected. Derek dropped by in the afternoon while Dad was at his physical therapy appointment. They went into the dining room, shutting the doors behind them. I moved closer, quiet as I could, and pressed my ear to the wood. "Paperwork ready?" Derek asked. "Yes. And I made sure he'll be in the perfect mood to agree," Patricia replied. I didn't hear the rest. The sudden creak of a chair made me step back, heart pounding. The watch felt like it was burning through my pocket. That night, I placed it on the nightstand beside me. The tick-tick-tick was steady, but my breathing wasn't. And as I closed my eyes, I knew, whatever they were planning, tomorrow was the day they'd make their move. Patricia had a way of performing kindness. In front of neighbors or friends, she was the attentive wife, touching Dad's arm, laughing at his jokes, refilling his glass before he even asked. But when it was just the two of us, that sweetness cooled into something sharper. It started with little comments. "You're still here? I thought by now you'd have found a life of your own. Or, your father and I could use more privacy, you know. This isn't just your home anymore." I told myself not to take the bait, to keep the peace for Dad's sake. But each time she said something, I felt the crack in our fragile arrangement widen, like the one running through the glass of my pocket watch. One afternoon, a week before the party, I came home from picking up groceries to find Patricia standing at the kitchen counter. The pill organizer was open in front of her. She was transferring small white tablets into one of the daily slots. "What are those?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Just something to help him sleep. He's been restless lately." I knew Dad's prescriptions by heart. These weren't his. From his doctor? I pressed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. From a doctor. She closed the lid with a click and walked away, humming. That night, I sat at the dining table after everyone had gone to bed, the watch resting in my palm. I traced the crack with my thumb, remembering how it happened. The day after Mom's funeral, I dropped it on the driveway. I'd been holding too many things at once: flowers, sympathy cards, grief. It hit the concrete face first, shattering the smooth glass. I never fixed it. Somehow, the flaw made it feel more real, more like life. But tonight, as the light from the lamp caught the fracture, I wondered how many more breaks it could take before it stopped keeping time. 2 days before the party, Patricia invited me to sit with her in the living room. It was unusual, she preferred me out of sight unless guests were around. "I hear you've been concerned about your father," she began, crossing her legs slowly. I kept my voice even. "Yes. He's been more tired than usual." She tilted her head. "He's 70, Amanda. People slow down. You should accept that." "I accept aging," I said. "Not sudden changes without explanation." Her smile tightened. "Maybe you're the reason he's stressed. Hovering over him all the time. It can't be healthy for him, or for you." I didn't answer. Instead, I listened to the steady tick of the watch in my pocket, counting the beats until the conversation ended. That evening, I noticed Derek's car in the driveway again. Dad was upstairs resting, so I slipped quietly toward the dining room. The doors were closed, but a faint murmur seeped through. "Closing date could be within the month," Derek was saying. Patricia replied, "Perfect. The sooner, the better." I leaned closer. "And Amanda?" Derek asked. "She'll be out before she even realizes what's happening," Patricia said. There was a note of satisfaction in her voice that made my stomach twist. A chair scraped suddenly, and I stepped back, heart pounding. The watch felt warm in my palm as I gripped it through my pocket. I barely made it into the kitchen before Patricia appeared, her eyes sharp. "Eavesdropping is a bad habit," she said lightly, as if she were talking about the weather. The next day, I resolved to keep a closer eye on everything, on Patricia, on Derek, on Dad's medication. I began noting the times he seemed most confused and what he'd eaten or drunk beforehand. But even with all my caution, I wasn't prepared for the look on Patricia's face the morning of the party. She came downstairs in that crimson dress, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar, and greeted me with a smile that didn't belong to celebration, it belonged to victory. The watch ticked steadily in my pocket, the crack in its glass catching the light. I had the uneasy feeling that before the day ended, something else in this house was going to break. The dining room was glowing with warm light, but the air felt wrong. Maybe it was the way Patricia kept glancing toward the front door, or the way Derek sat back in his chair like he was waiting for the perfect cue. Dad looked happy enough, seated at the head of the table in the new blue shirt I'd bought him. His eyes softened when I placed the photo album in front of him. He traced a picture of Mom with his fingers, smiling faintly. "This is wonderful, Amanda," he said, his voice thick with emotion. For a few minutes, it felt like the night might just stay about him, about family, about memory. Then Derek tapped his glass. "Before dessert," he began, "I'd like to make an announcement." His eyes slid to mine, holding them for a fraction longer than necessary. "Dad, you've given us so much over the years. Now it's time for us to give something back." I felt the pocket watch in my skirt pocket, heavy against my thigh. My fingers found the crack in the glass, tracing it like a lifeline. "As many of you know," Derek continued, "this house has become too much for Dad to manage. The stairs, the upkeep, the taxes, it's a lot for anyone, let alone someone his age. Patricia has been worried about him, and after a lot of thought, we've decided it's time for a change." He pulled a folded document from his jacket. "Dad has signed over power of attorney to me. We're selling the house and moving him to Oakwood Terraces, a premium senior living community." The words landed like a blow. The room erupted in polite applause, as if they were congratulating him. Pack your bags, Amanda, Derek added, smiling coldly. This house is going up for sale. The watch ticked in my pocket, a metronome against the roaring in my ears. I looked at Dad, confused, blinking rapidly, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. What about Lake Tahoe? He asked softly. Amanda said we were going to see the sunrise. Derek laughed under his breath. Dad, you're in no condition for travel. Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with sweetness. Oakwood has beautiful views, darling. And Amanda can visit any time. That was my cue. I stood, the chair legs scraping sharply against the hardwood. The room went still. The paperwork stops now, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Dad isn't selling this house. And he's not moving anywhere. Derek's smirk faltered. Too late, little sister. The papers are already signed. Signed, I said, while Dad was under the influence of sedatives Patricia gave him without his knowledge. Patricia gasped. That's absurd. Michael, my attorney and oldest friend, stepped through the doorway, followed by Uncle Walter and Dr. Capper. They moved with quiet purpose, like we'd rehearsed this. Michael addressed the room. We have evidence of unauthorized medication in Harold's system, pharmacy records, and video footage of Patricia altering his prescriptions. We also have text messages between Patricia and Derek, dating back to before she even met Harold, detailing a plan to gain control of this property. Lauren, my sister, shifted uncomfortably. Is this true? She asked Derek. They're twisting everything, Derek snapped. Walter's voice cut in, calm but firm. Barbara, your mother, wanted this house to stay in the family, specifically with whoever cared for Harold in his later years. Patricia and Derek have been conspiring to take it for themselves. I took out my phone, pulling up the screenshots. Is this your idea of coincidence, Derek? I handed it to Lauren. The texts were unmistakable. Patricia's mask slipped. Fine. Yes. We planned it. He gets the business side, I play the devoted wife, and we split the proceeds when the house sells. You happy now? Gasps rippled around the table. Even Derek looked blindsided by her bluntness. Dad, I said gently, remember how clear you felt when Patricia visited her sister last month? That's because you were taking your real medications. Dr. Capper stepped forward. Mr. Walker, you are still cognitively capable when properly medicated. This so-called power of attorney Derek holds is invalid. It was signed while you were impaired by substances not prescribed to you. Patricia's voice rose, shrill. You can't prove that. Michael's tone was cool. We already have. And as of an hour ago, a judge has issued an emergency protective order preventing any sale of this property. Frank, the real estate agent Patricia had brought, began gathering his brochures. I was told this was a family decision. I'm not part of this. He left without another word. Dad's gaze, once fogged, sharpened. He turned to Patricia. If you loved me, you wouldn't have drugged me. You wouldn't have lied. Her face twisted. I didn't sign up to be stuck in this outdated house. Derek promised me a penthouse downtown. Walter stepped forward. You also signed a prenup, Patricia, no claim to this property. Given the circumstances, we'll be pursuing annulment for fraud. Patricia shot Derek a look of pure venom. You said we were untouchable. I never said that, Derek muttered, avoiding her eyes. Lauren crossed to Dad's side. I can't believe I trusted you, she said to Derek, her voice shaking. Get out, Dad said. His voice was stronger than I'd heard in months. I need time to think. Alone. Derek hesitated, then grabbed his jacket and stormed out. Patricia followed, muttering curses under her breath. When the door slammed, the only sound was the faint tick-tick of my pocket watch. I pulled it out and set it on the table, the crack in the glass catching the light from the chandelier. It felt like the room itself exhaled, like the house had been holding its breath until now. Dad looked at me, eyes wet. Thank you, he said simply. I closed my hand over the watch. We're not done yet. But tonight, we've taken it back. The night after the confrontation, the house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for months. No sharp perfume lingering in the hallway. No hushed voices behind closed doors. Just the tick of my pocket watch on the nightstand. I lay in bed, staring at the fractured glass face. The crack caught the faint glow from the street lamp outside, splitting the light in two. It reminded me of what we'd done earlier that evening, splitting their story wide open for everyone to see. But I knew this wasn't over. Derek had stormed out with the kind of anger that doesn't dissolve overnight. Patricia's parting threat still rang in my ears. The next morning, Michael and I sat at the kitchen table, spreading documents across the polished wood. First step, he said, file a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services. That locks in the investigation and adds weight to any criminal charges. I nodded, taking notes. And the house? Already covered. The protective order is in effect. No sale, no liens, no transfer without your signature and Walter's. We'll also file to have Derek's power of attorney formally revoked, though, in practice, it's already dead. Walter arrived mid-morning, looking tired but determined. He placed a small metal box on the table. Your mother's original will, he said. Barbara's handwriting, notarized. She was very clear, this house stays with the child who cares for Harold. That's you. I ran my fingers over the worn lid of the box. The watch in my pocket seemed to tick louder, like it approved. For the rest of the week, we worked quietly but relentlessly. Michael drafted legal motions. Walter called in favors from his old contacts in real estate law. I went through every drawer, every cabinet, photographing and cataloging Dad's important papers. Dad watched from his armchair, more alert each day. Feels like we're fortifying a castle, he joked one afternoon. In a way, we are, I said, smiling. We didn't speak of Derek or Patricia much. It was enough to know that Patricia was meeting with her attorney, likely trying to negotiate a softer landing. Derek had gone silent, but I could feel him circling in the background, waiting for an opening. So I gave him none. By Friday, the DA's office confirmed they'd be pursuing charges of elder abuse and financial exploitation against Patricia. The blood tests from Dr. Capper had come back, sedatives and anti-anxiety meds not prescribed to Dad, in significant amounts. Combined with the video footage and text messages, the case was solid. She'll probably take a plea, Michael said. No jail time, but probation, community service, and a permanent restraining order. I thought of Patricia's crimson dress at the party, the satisfaction in her smile. It was strange to imagine her folding laundry in an orange vest, picking up trash by the side of the road. As for Derek, the state licensing board had opened an ethics investigation into his finances. If they found what we suspected, that he'd funneled Dad's money through his own company, he could lose his professional credentials. It wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And it was happening without me ever having to raise my voice. That Sunday, I sat on the porch swing with Dad. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. I took the watch from my pocket, winding it slowly. The tick-tick-tick filled the comfortable silence between us. You've been quiet, Dad said. I've been working, I replied. Making sure no one can touch this house again. He nodded. Your mother would be proud. I looked at the crack in the watch's glass, thinking how it had survived years of wear, drops, and weather. It had kept time through grief, through loss, through betrayal. Just like we had. Inside, Michael's voice carried from the dining room as he spoke with Walter about the next legal filing. The sound wasn't intrusive, it was steady, reassuring. For the first time in months, I let myself exhale. We weren't finished yet, but the worst of the storm had passed. The rest was just tying down the loose ends, securing the walls, and keeping the gates shut. In battles like this, the loudest victory isn't a cheer. It's the quiet knowledge that you've taken back what's yours, and that no one will take it again. The watch ticked on, its fractured face catching the late afternoon sun. I decided I wouldn't fix it, not yet. Some things are worth leaving imperfect, as a reminder of what they've endured. Winter came early that year. One morning, I woke to find the garden dusted with snow, each branch etched in white against a pale sky. The house seemed to breathe differently in the cold, slower, but steady. 3 months had passed since the night everything broke open. Patricia was gone for good, bound by a restraining order. Derek hadn't called or written. The legal battles were winding down, the house secured under my and Walter's names, just as Mom had intended. Life had a quieter rhythm now. I worked part-time from home, taking calls from clients in the morning and spending afternoons with Dad, reading on the porch, playing chess by the fire, cooking the recipes Mom had taught me. Dad had color in his cheeks again. The fog in his eyes had lifted. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking around the house like he was seeing it for the first time in years. "It feels alive again," he said once, and I knew exactly what he meant. One evening, we sat on the porch swing as the sky faded into shades of gold and pink. I pulled the pocket watch from my coat. Its tick was steady, as it had always been, the crack in the glass catching the last of the sunlight. "I had this fixed," I told Dad, holding it out to him. The glass was whole now, smooth under my fingers. The crack was gone, but the memory of it remained, etched in me, if not in the watch. Dad turned it over in his hands. "It looks just like the day your mother gave it to you." I smiled. She told me that as long as it ticks, I'd always find my way back home. We sat in silence for a while, the cold air biting at our cheeks. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. A dog barked. Life kept moving forward, one tick at a time. "I used to think home was just a place," I said finally. "But now I think it's the people you protect, and the promises you keep." Dad nodded slowly. "And sometimes, protecting home means standing up to the people you thought were family." The words settled between us like snow, quiet, but impossible to ignore. When we went back inside, the warmth of the house wrapped around us. I glanced at the mantel where Mom's photograph stood, framed in wood polished by years of careful dusting. For the first time in a long time, I didn't just see what we'd lost. I saw what we'd kept. That night, as I wound the pocket watch before bed, I thought about all the times I'd traced the crack in its glass, worrying it might stop keeping time. But it hadn't. It had carried me through grief, through suspicion, through the hardest choices I'd ever had to make. Some things endure, not because they're unbreakable, but because they're repaired with care. And as the watch ticked in the dark, I realized, I hadn't just saved the house. I'd saved its soul. And maybe, in some quiet way, my own. In the months since that night, the snow has melted, the leaves have returned, and life inside this house has found its rhythm again. Dad's laughter fills the kitchen. The smell of apple pie, Mom's recipe, drifts through the halls. And every evening, the porch swing creaks under the weight of quiet conversations that matter more than any property or bank account ever could. I still keep the pocket watch close. The crack in its glass is gone now, but I remember every moment it carried me through, every second when I thought I couldn't push forward, and did anyway. It's a reminder that broken things aren't worthless. Sometimes, they're proof of what we've endured. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: protecting the people and places you love doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it's quiet persistence, the willingness to notice when something's wrong, and the courage to act before it's too late. You don't have to shout to fight. You just have to refuse to give up. And maybe, just maybe, the soul of a home, like the soul of a person, grows stronger every time it's defended.